I'm seeing more and more people leaving Victoria for the opportunities that they can find, because more and more people are sort of leaving and trying to go back home or go interstate or go further out, so that there's a little bit more freedom as far as work and things like that.
Today we're heading to Canberra to talk to a chef in quarantine. But Mark Glenn isn't a Canberra fellow. He was, until very recently, the head chef of Cumulus Inc in the city of Melbourne. Flinders Lane, where Cumulus is certainly not the Flinders Lane that Melbourne has prided itself on for so many years. A culinary hub, a place where you could stumble from restaurant to restaurant enjoying some of Melbourne's best food. The city is certainly suffering in it's the centre of a Melbourne that is not the Melbourne that we know and love. We hope it soon will be again. But in the meantime, Mark is exploring other pastures. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you?
Yeah, well, it's a sunny day in Melbourne town. I'm still in love with the city, but I'm sad for the state that it's in right now. Tell us about where you are right now in Canberra and what you're doing there.
So I am in an area called Barton, in one of the 4 quarantine hotels that are available in the ACT. It's also nice and bright and sunny, but I am unfortunately restricted to my balcony as my only form of outdoors. I'm halfway through 2 weeks worth of quarantine, so.
And what's it like? I mean, tell me about the process of leaving Melbourne and arriving in Canberra. I mean, is it hard to leave Melbourne? I just can't even imagine going further than 5K from home.
Yeah, yeah. The initial process is actually pretty laborious. It's almost like applying for a visa. You have to get a permit to enter, and flights have to be confirmed through the government with ACT Health and all that kind of thing. And then once you get to the airport, you need to show the permit so that they know that you're travelling safely to leave Melbourne. On the plane, I was one of 6 people.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a really weird feeling. And then once I got off the plane, it sort of got a little bit relaxed in comparison. I was not asked. When I got off the plane, I approached a table where I was asked for my ID and where I came from, and I said Melbourne. And then the girl that I was speaking to said, "Okay, great. If you go through this door, your bags will be on the carousel, and then if you take the first door on the left, you can jump into a taxi or an Uber to your accommodation."
Right, but hang on a minute. Aren't you coming from Melbourne, like the coronavirus capital of Australia? You could have been carrying
Yeah,
the
exactly.
pandemic with you. So, I mean, that seems pretty loose.
It was pretty surprising initially, and then I suppose it got looser as the process went on. I was picked up and taken to my accommodation. When I got to my accommodation, I was told that my room wasn't ready,
Oh,
which under normal circumstances is, fair enough. You just go out and go for a walk or whatever. But I guess given that I'm not meant to be in contact with anyone or out anywhere, I sort of just waited in that room. And then once it was ready, I was just told that it was ready and where to go. And then I was not escorted. No one followed me. No one asked me where I was going. I walked across the road and down the street and into my accommodation. There was no guards, no police, nothing. The only precaution that they take is to only activate your room card for the night that you check in. So if you leave, you can't get back in your room. But in saying that, there's people on the ground floor. The wall is small enough off their balcony that they'd be able to jump back and forth and all that kind of thing. There's a girl who's sort of downstairs from me who every day has different friends come over and have lunch with her over the balcony, which is really nice for her, but kind of defeats the purpose of the quarantine thing. Yeah, so it's been really quite strange. And then I suppose the probably the weirdest part of it is after I was told that I would be contacted by ACT Health for to check in if I've got symptoms or if I need anything or anything like that. And after about day 5, I called them to organise a test not because I have symptoms, but they recommend. So it's your choice whether you have a test before you leave quarantine or not, which again just screams lack of enforcement kind of thing. And upon calling them to find out the process for testing, I was told that I wasn't in this system and they didn't know that I was in quarantine.
Right. And it's, yeah, sorry, it's all a bit mind-boggling because, of course, the hotel quarantine is such a massive story in Melbourne and Victoria. It's the fact that the virus escaped from hotel quarantine is why I've got a 5K wall around me. So yeah, it's pretty extraordinary to think that there is that it's so loose. Yeah, it's pretty baffling. What's the like? How do they bring you food, or are you left to your own devices to order takeaway, or how does that part of it work?
So I'm allowed to have anyone enter the building and drop things off to me. They can come to my door. But again, there's no enforcement or anything like that. People can just come and ring my doorbell. I let them up, and then it's up to me, which as a personal responsibility to not open the front door until they've left again.
Yeah.
There's like I said, there's no. They're just really, really relying on people doing the right thing. And I think the reason that other places have gotten away with it versus what has happened in Melbourne is probably just the volume of overseas travellers that return to Melbourne, in comparison to somewhere like Canberra, which is obviously not much of an international port in that regard.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's a lot of luck and bad luck at play in this whole scenario, and I think any place in the world could be, have one super spreader that gets out amongst it, and things can very quickly get out of hand. So good on you for not being that super spreader, Mark, and being a,
Yeah.
a good citizen. But it's just slightly concerning that the systems are not built up around people such as yourself to ensure the safety of the whole community. But anyway,
I know.
yeah.
Well, I should actually give you probably the icing on the cake of the whole lack of enforcement, and that is when I asked about my testing on day 11. The the response that I got was that they can't send anyone out to one of the 4 hotels to test people. So I would just have to tell the hotel that I was leaving for the day. So they give me another key, and then I'd have to jump in an Uber or a taxi. So my response was pretty outraged, but I said, what if I had symptoms? Then what do I do? And the response was, yeah, we still expect you to get a taxi unless they're really severe and you need medical attention.
Wow. It's, I mean, uh, I hope the taxis and Uber drivers are being informed of the system that depends upon them but doesn't protect them.
Yeah. And I highly doubt that they would be. It's just a matter of whether they know which hotels are quarantine hotels or not.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they're a frontline worker in that regard. Yeah. Well, yeah, that side of it, Mark, is pretty strange and worrying. But I'm glad that you are symptom free and unlikely to take the Melbourne, whatever strain's going around Melbourne, up to Canberra and share it out there. So tell us what has taken you to Canberra. What are you up there to do?
So I have moved up here for work. Like you mentioned before, up until recently, I've been working at Cumulus Inc, and that's been my little world for the last few years. But for the last 7 months, the entire hospitality industry has been, underemployed, if not unemployed, for the vast majority. And I guess for me, I just didn't really see anything going back to what I would call Melbourne normal for a really, really long time. And I guess I sort of just got a little bit past waiting around for things to get better.
Is that specifically because you're in the centre of town, or is it a general overview of the Melbourne hospitality industry?
It's a little bit of both. The fact that, I mean, with the new announcements of, recommending outdoor dining and that type of thing is fine for, out in the suburbs or the country or whatever it might be. But anywhere in a city, like, in the city or sort of inner suburbs, people don't have outdoor space. There's not, even with social distancing in place, there's only so many people you're able to fit in a restaurant, which really makes it very, very difficult to work on the model that you were working on previously. The Melbourne vibe of, like you said, with Flinders Lane being that sort of place you can bounce from, restaurant to restaurant and bar to bar and things like that. And everyone that you walk into is bustling and there's lots of people crammed in and there's lots of energy in the room. And that's the kind of Melbourne that I'm talking about when I say normal, I guess. And it seems so far away from it at the moment that, I guess greener pastures was sort of my only, not only option, but I suppose I decided to take that option.
Yeah. So Cumulus was open for a few weeks in June. What was that like?
It was a little bit strange, I must say. The different offerings that, with the Trader House group, so Andrew's restaurants, the way that they reacted to all of the issues that arose and the different sort of offerings that they came up with the bakeries and, Marion and the weekend boxes, and then now Providore and all that kind of thing. It's been really, really amazing just to watch not only them, but everyone else in hospitality just try and pivot and get creative about what they can do. I guess for us, when we did reopen, it was really difficult to try and figure out what that looked like, because we could only have 20 initially, and then even with social distancing, I think it was 27 was our total number that we were allowed in each of the restaurants. So we sort of went to a tasting menu only sort of scenario, and that was functional and it sort of worked for the little time, but it was, in the end, it was pretty short lived, unfortunately.
It was short lived, and yeah, it is so hard to imagine a restaurant like Cumulus that's only able to operate on like a third of your capacity. It is so much about being there. It's definitely one of those walk-in restaurants. It's open breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It epitomizes the style of Melbourne dining that we love. I mean, it's such a leader in that kind of high quality all day dining space. To take it as you will, whether it's for breakfast, whether it's for coffee, whether it's, you can use it as a bar, you can, it's such a flexible place. And that's just so much part of the beauty of it, to think about a restaurant like that having to be much more regimented, much more boxed in. It is going to be a real challenge for those places to have, the Melbourne vibe. So it's a really, really tricky one to work out how to reconstruct, because Melbourne is so much about how things feel. It's not just about, how things taste, what's on the plate. It is so much about a mood and about feeling like you're part of something. So, I mean, to me, it's so sad that you've left. It's like, you've stepped out of the room because you don't reckon the room's going to be what it needs to be. I find it a little bit heartbreaking, to be honest, Mark.
Yeah, I suppose that's the overarching thing is, had this whole situation have not come about, then I wouldn't have had any intention of moving on or anything like that. The position that I had and the group that I worked with was amazing. There's so many really, really professional operators within that, and every day was always something new. And I suppose some of the other limitations, even with when we sort of went to reopen, is what's really achievable. I mean, we couldn't really have breakfast because it's, financially it's not worth opening, because the staff to get it done relies on being able to, really get people through and turn people over and things like that. And then, not having any events that are a really, really big part of that business as well, really, it just made it a very, very different thing to try and operate within.
Yeah. So for anyone who's not aware, Cumulus and the other restaurants that are part of the Trader House Group are owned by Andrew McConnell, who's one of Melbourne's most prominent chefs and restaurateurs. What was it like telling Andrew that you were resigning and moving to Canberra?
Yeah, it was a bit strange. Mainly because everything had to be on the phone, I guess, because at that point we sort of weren't in a lot of contact as physically anyway. Yeah, it was pretty strange and a little bit daunting, but he was pretty responsive, and I think everyone that I did sort of speak to about it was really of two minds about it. One part being sort of disappointed that I'm moving on, but at the same time understanding that the situation is what it is, and I guess now even after that, I'm seeing more and more people leaving Victoria for the opportunities that they can find, because I guess the sentiment that I have is sort of starting to. I'm not that I'm the first person to go anywhere, but as in, I guess I'm noticing now that more and more people are sort of leaving and trying to go back home or go interstate or go further out, so that there's a little bit more freedom as far as work and things like that.
Yeah, and it's definitely something that many restaurateurs have spoken of, and of course many people who are here on temporary visas who just simply have no way to support themselves and no support from the government have unfortunately jumped on planes when they were able to access flights, and if indeed they were able to find the funds to buy plane tickets. So it's that sort of skills drain is certainly going to be something that impacts Melbourne as it recovers. Just from your experience working in Melbourne restaurants, what do you think that the impact of that is going to be?
Well, I suppose the future of Melbourne dining is a very unsure thing at the moment, just by the places that are sort of places that aren't going to survive it. With the sort of estimations of how many restaurants in the industry are going to close, and what the actual dining scene is going to look like as far as what we're able to do. And I think, I don't know, maybe I guess there's a little bit of a glimmer of hope that maybe the amount of places that close and the people that have left might balance out, so that there's still quality people around, or people that really want to do it. But I think the long-term effect of this is sort of, people that are interested in this kind of career path or something within this field, looking at it and thinking, is, if something else like this comes up, do I want to be in an industry that's going to be so fraught with, the first one to close, the last one to open kind of mentality? So I think the long-term effect is going to be more people leaving, but also less people wanting to get into it.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because I think, anyone who thinks about the state of the hospitality industry and the way the employment side of it works would say that we need more young Australians coming into the industry. We need hospitality to be valued as a career pathway, so that there are, talented people coming through at a high level of professionalism to just raise the overall bar for everyone in the industry. And I think, yeah, what you're identifying is a very big hurdle to that happening, at least in the short term. Yes, it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfurls. Mark, tell us about the job that you're going to.
So I'm moving it's called Pialligo Estate. It's a winery with sort of a couple of different food offerings on the estate, and then they have also got a few off-site projects. Probably the most notable is their smokehouse, which makes cured products and sausages and that type of charcuterie end of things, which is really, really high standard. Actually, I'm very pleasantly surprised as I've been working my way through the catalogue of it all. And then yeah, so I suppose and there's also a sort of function venue attached to the estate as well.
I'm assuming you've never actually been there.
I have not. I've not even been to Canberra before, believe it or not.
it's pretty crazy the way, yeah, just like you have to resign on the phone, and I guess, like, what did you do? Did you do your interview over Zoom or something?
Yeah, yeah, and then I sort of had to do my exit interview with over Zoom, and then all of my correspondence has been online. It's kind of I guess we're kind of lucky in one regard that I suppose during this quarantine period, with the amount of technology that we've got, I haven't actually felt alone because I've got so many people to have Zoom chats with and meetings with and things like that. So I suppose that's a little bit of a silver lining.
I think one of the things that I always notice when talking to people who worked with Andrew McConnell and his restaurants and have come out to do their own things or to do other things is that, the things that they've learnt and picked up along the way. How do you think that your past years at Cumulus and as part of the group have set you up to do something that's big and new and elsewhere?
Oh, immensely. Yeah, I guess the amount of investment on their part into my professional development has definitely, I've grown exponentially in the time that I've been there. I guess when I started there, I started in Cumulus Up, and I kind of just wanted to do the little wine bar that could kind of thing, and to a really high standard, and then to get to a point where just before shutdown, it was kind of managing with a really, really good team in hand, sort of managing 2 restaurants plus 2 event spaces, and then little offsites and things like that. But the just the level of investment as far as management, sort of courses and direction, and then even having some, like I said earlier, just the level of professionalism from the sort of senior team just really sets you up to, I guess, put those things in place when you go somewhere else, and really sets you up to sort of be mindful of a lot of things that where I suppose when you work in other restaurants that don't have as much of a focus on that kind of thing, things go by the wayside. So it really sets you up to, I guess, have your own thing or to do something new.
I think that's something that it's really important that Melbourne diners value is a group that is well resourced enough and believes in the importance of that training and that depth to really build people as career professionals, not just as bodies in a room doing tasks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, I know that that so many great people have come out of Andrew's restaurants and done their own fantastic things, but I have to say I love it when they do them in Melbourne as well, so we get the benefit. But I don't want to.
Well, hopefully one day when this all rolls over, then maybe I'll be back.
Yeah. Are you from Melbourne originally, Mark?
No, I'm actually from the UK, but I've lived in Melbourne since I was young.
Oh, okay, right. Because you used to work at Commoner, didn't you?
I did, actually.
Yeah, because that was another restaurant that I really loved.
Yep. So I worked there, I don't even want to count how many years ago that was now, with Joe and Matt. And that was amazing. That was I suppose that was kind of my first real sort of, I guess, even though it was a small restaurant with a very small team, it was only me and 2 others. It was kind of my first sort of senior role in a reputable place. And it was great. I loved cooking there. Just with a wood fire out the back, and obviously Matt and Joe doing all the foraging, and they would all, Matt was sort of supplying us with all our fruit and veg and all that kind of thing, and it was just it was a really, really nice experience.
Yeah. Well, so the last time I spoke to Joe was only a couple of weeks ago. So Joe Corrigan, her and Matt, and they're now fully into the foraging and supplying restaurants with mushrooms and taking people on seasonal mushroom gathering trips, if I'm not mistaken. She got in touch with me a couple of weeks ago to suggest that I speak to Hayley Raychura, who's from Entervire Laundry. And she, I guess Joe and Matt got out of restaurants, and Entervire Laundry is a tiny restaurant in a home. And I guess it's, as people who used to run a restaurant, but now speaking to someone who could possibly run a restaurant, but now has a little pop-up in her house. I don't know. I think that, I suppose what I'm trying to say in a very convoluted way is that there are lots of different pathways for people to get great food experiences to people. And now is a time that a lot of people are wondering if the traditional restaurant model is the way to do that. I think there are lots of different creative minds at work and thinking about, well, if it's not a CBD restaurant that's buzzing and full of people, then what are some of the other ways that we can create those great hospitality experiences? Are these the kinds of conversations that you've heard people having?
Absolutely, and even with some of the crew down at Cumulus, we've got a couple of people that are sort of in that visa situation where they're sort of underemployed, but they've got time, and they want to stick it out and they want to stay here, and we've got people making all sorts of pastry stuff, and it's actually been really, really nice to watch those people sort of take it by the horns and start doing something themselves to try and prop themselves up, but at the same time something to support them as far as financially. And then I guess it doesn't hurt when you've got all the time in the world on your hands to have an activity to do. So but I mean, you've only got to sort of look at Instagram and see the thousands of different people doing whatever it might be. I'm pretty sure I've seen more Basque cheesecakes in the last month than I have ever been made before.
I reckon it's true.
Yeah. So
I've got a page on my website that I set up last week when we realised that lockdown was extending, and it's called the Visa Holder Hustles. So if there are any visa holders out there who have got side businesses that they'd like promoted, let me know. Or if you know of someone who's making whatever it is, a Basque cheesecake or something that other people can buy, then please let me know so I can promote it, and we can help these people get through this incredibly tough period. Mark, what are you looking forward to cooking when you get out?
I think just being able to sort of on the estate, there's it's 56 acres, and there's 3 full-time gardeners. So I'm really looking forward to just being able to go out, talk to them, plan what we're going to grow, and then just take stuff from the garden and just cook it as straight out of the ground kind of thing. Because that's that's a pretty rare opportunity to be able to do, I guess.
Yeah, that sounds so exciting. And I guess springtime's a great time to roll up and start seeing what's sprouting.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, good luck getting through the final week of your quarantine, and we definitely wish you all the best in your new job. Please come back to Melbourne and make something beautiful here. I know Melbourne is going to get through this. It's certainly a tough road ahead, but it's fantastic to have your perspective. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks for having me on.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.